All right.
There you go.
And with that, let's welcome Scott Taylor, the data whisperer, to the show. Scott,
There we go.
Hey there, guys. How are you?
good. How
Nice
are you
to
doing?
see you.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love a Simpsons intro? Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. Yeah. So welcome to the show, Scott. It's good to finally have you on. We'll get into data storytelling, particularly, for the boardroom and how you can use the power of data storytelling to secure funding for your projects and make yourself look amazing. But before we do, why don't we start with a little introduction to kind of who you are and where you come from?
Great. Scott Taylor, Data Whisperer. I go by that moniker. I help calm data down. That's what all of us in the data management space want to do. They want to help calm data down. But if you've seen me in person or watched any of my videos, spoiler alert, I don't do a whole lot of whispering. I'm out there yelling, selling, and telling about the power and value of data management, trying to shake up the space to get.
So you're the data yodeler, really.
Tell a better data story. Talk about what you need in a business accessible fashion, and your life will be a whole lot easier as a data leader.
Yeah. And how did you find yourself as Scott the Data Whisperer? What was that journey like?
So I started off in sales and marketing at Nielsen, or part of Nielsen Data, one of the world's largest and oldest iconic data companies. Also had a similar role at Dun & Bradstreet, working in master data, reference data, metadata, data matching, data structuring, hierarchy, maintenance, all that kind of stuff. And I found that I was particularly good at explaining these concepts in really simple ways to the IT. We used to, back in the day, I go back pre-2K here. So I go way back, enterprise, SAP was just coming out, CRM, people were learning what that was. So yeah, and data was always, my kind of services were sold actually directly to the IT department. There was no chief data officer. There was like, data's on computers, so IT's got to take care of it.
Yeah.
So talking to the IT folks, I started getting requests like, we love this. Can you come and explain it to our CFO with us? Because you seem to understand how to speak that language. And that wasn't just a individual anecdote. That happened consistently. And I always had this talent of being able to put things in a compelling way, put the story together. I tell people I've been in storytelling since it was 2 words. So we go way back on that technique. And I realized I filled this niche between the IT system and eventually nowadays data side, which is highly technical, focused more on how things are done, and the business side that in some cases didn't want to hear anything about this. And in other cases were struggling to understand what their own data folks were talking about because it was way too technical and came along around some sort of pithy headline ways to describe what I do. I focus on the why instead of the how. I think it's important to determine the truth in data before you derive meaning out of it. So I just had this talent for telling stories. And when I look back at my career, it was anywhere I was successful, it was because I helped the organization put a better story together. I was in a lot of roles that I was not as successful in, but when I look back, I go, okay, that's really what made me as successful as I was in the organizations that I was in, was just telling a story.
So let's talk about that. Telling a story. As a data person, you may have focused your career on hard technical skills. You're a Python wizard. You're incredible at SQL. You learned Tableau. You're a DBT guru. Why is telling a story important? Let's start from there. Why should data people care?
While they're out there trying to implement the latest analytics graph hub fabric mesh, they're looking for support from their stakeholders. They're looking for attention from the C-level, or they're looking for, let's just say, funding. How about some money? Don't forget the money to do the data work they want to do. And the people who have that support that they crave and the attention and the money aren't interested in how well you do DBT or what your Python skills are or what your technical expertise is in general. They want to understand why it helps enable the strategic intentions of their enterprise. We got a company, it's selling widgets. We're that's what we, how does what you do, why does what you do in data help me sell more widgets? Whatever those widgets are. And I've found such common themes, trends, challenges, opportunities, disasters, problems at enterprise companies tend to be, they're not exactly the same, but they're more the same than they are different. And if you're an enterprise, which is my audience, you have these, you have lots of silos, you have disparate data, you have multiple sources, you have all kinds of stakeholders, you're in multiple countries. You start to play this litany of attributes and that represent the typical enterprise, and just realize there's a foundational story there in every company about why managing data is of strategic importance, and you got to let it out. Got to get it out there. So
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, you and I have a fairly similar path in some ways. Like that's also been my power in data. Has never been, oh, I'm the best Python programmer, right? It's that I can talk to the best Python programmer, and then I can go talk to the decision makers and help them understand why the best Python programmer is adding value.
I'm the worst Python programmer. I never even opened it up. I'm now very comfortable in releasing this secret, as I've done in the last few years. I don't actually do or have never done any of the work that I talk about. I was always on the vendor side, so engaging with enterprises. So I've never been on the client side or the enterprise side, actually doing data work. I'm not technical at all, but I'm able to kind of capture the passion and the frustration of that world and communicate it in a way to other folks who aren't even listening, to get them to understand the importance of it. And that was that. Once I found that niche and was confident enough to go, okay, that's where I play. I stick to my position. I think I play it extremely well, but I stick to my position. And where I've gotten in trouble is when I try and branch out into, well, here's how you get it done. Because anything I know about the how in data, I learned from somebody else, not from experience. I learned from somebody who said, in most cases, Scott, you're explaining it that way, but that's not how it is. You should explain it this way. So I look for that. Always look for technical partners to keep me honest, to keep me straight, because I know I can suffer from this talent of being able to make anything sound compelling. And when I worked at Nielsen, Dun & Bradstreet, and these other places, I would have technical partners and just go, hey, tell me if I'm wrong. I'll fix it. I'll make it sound good no matter what it is, but I want to be accurate as well.
So we've kind of established it's very important. Do you think we take this seriously enough in the data industry? Do you see data practitioners, is there an awareness that this is something they need to invest in at this point?
I don't think it's serious enough. No, I mean, there's not a general practice area. Data storytelling itself, I wish it had been called analytic storytelling, because most of it is about taking a set of output, KPIs, direction, research, whatever it is, putting in a business context to help drive some action. That's great. Use this graph, I'm not downplaying that, but it's super important. But I was trying to create a niche around the other type of data storytelling, which is why data is important at all, and why managing it, which tends to be a back office, clerical, boring sound part of the space, is fundamental to anything you want to do with data. And I think as you grow as a leader, it's incumbent on you to be able to communicate better. If you want to be a leader, you have to communicate. There's just no other way around it, unless you're some, maniacal, egocentric founder who, can rule the roost. But most of us aren't. And most people, we live in that enterprise space of, you got to collaborate, you got to work with other teams, you got to get funding, you got to get support, budget time's coming, prove the stuff, where's the ROI, all those things that we have to deal with. But as you mentioned, if you're a great DBT person or Python or whatever, the irony is, and part of what I try to highlight for folks is, it's okay if you're not yet, because to be great in data takes the technical skills, takes the hard skills, and you don't focus on the soft skills, which again, ironically, aren't that soft, aren't that easy, of communication, of empathy, of describing, of listening, all that stuff that helps you be, in my case, a better salesman, a better marketer, a better strategy person.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. The soft skills are often the hard part. That's the irony of it all.
Yeah.
We have a couple comments here. So we got Ravi tuning in from India. Welcome to the show, Ravi. It's good to have you. Now, this is kind of more of a comment and less of a question, but I'd like to get your take on it. He says, well, now that we have Gen AI tools to code, we only need to review. What do you think of that? Is that accurate yet?
I don't know. Is that for this show? Is this
Yeah.
for me?
Right.
Sure. Next question. Yes.
Yeah.
But I get you still. I mean, again, that's sort of a technical question. I've never coded a line in my life other than, sixth grade computer programming where we
Yeah.
were doing basic, it was like
Mhm.
10, go to whatever it was. But I guess so.
Yeah.
That's
Eric,
what they say. But
E-
they also say, Gen AI is going to be, the magic wand for data management as well. But is there, it's going to fix all this stuff and I'm sure there's a role in it, but I don't think it's, the Ozempic for MDM isn't necessarily Gen AI. You still got to do the hard work.
exactly. Right. Yeah, exactly. Eric, why don't you, because you use Gen AI a lot in the
Yeah.
course of your job. Why don't you address Ravi's question? And while you're doing that,
Sure.
my new puppy is begging to go outside. So I'm going to take him outside and I'll be right back. Eric, he's a baby. So unfortunately, I haven't taught him to time his needs around the live stream.
Gotcha.
It's a family show. It's a reality show now.
It really is. So I'm going to, I'll be back in like 2 minutes. Eric, why don't you take Ravi's question while
Sure.
I take care of the dog. Eric, take the question, and I guess I'll have some more coffee.
All right. So now we have Gen AI to code we only need to review. So I would say no, not really. Not yet, at least. I'm sure you've done some of this Gen AI coding. It helps you if you kind of know what you're doing. Also helps you if you have no idea what you're doing. But you have to actually review it. And if you tune into our show from last week, we were giving a demo of the Databricks AI BI Genie or whatever. And so Ryan was demoing it, and I had never seen this before. So I just so he was showing it to me. I took a look at it. I said, okay, well, ask this Genie. It's the AI chatbot for your analytics on Databricks. I said, all right, now ask it for a more complicated question. And then it totally misunderstood and couldn't understand what we were saying. So so at the moment I just said, oh, thank God I still got a job, because you were showing this new tool, and it's well, it looks like I still need to be here because you need to be able to clearly communicate with the tool, and luckily, another thing, you need to be able to clearly communicate with the chatbot to give you what you want, and luckily, end users can never do that, so you're still employed. So now we have Gen AI to code, we all need to review. I don't think so, not right now. I've used Cursor AI and that sort of stuff, and it's you still need to kind of know what you're doing. So that's what I would say to that. Not yet. Call me in 2 years, maybe things will be different, but right now we're still employed. So.
Yeah, and then Michael Dunphy says,
I totally agree. Okay, I totally agree. I took the words right out of my mouth.
All right.
Michael
Glad we're on the
Dunphy
same
says, Scott, you were talking about kind of visionaries versus implementers. Let me ask you: are those two separate things? Do you often find that one person who you think is strong in
I have
both?
a partner who's became my wife. And we talk about how I was head in the clouds, she's feet on the ground.
Yeah.
And so people have this balance. If you know which one you tend to be, and you can pair yourself up with the other, because great ideas don't mean anything unless you do them. And what are you doing that's worth something if you don't have a great idea? And it's rare that people have both of those, that yin and yang, completely in their being. But versus you need them both. I think you need them both.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, when it comes to that data storytelling, what are the top mistakes you see people make when they have to present their data or go advocate for themselves, say, hey, I need budget to build these analytics or, get this new database? What are the top mistakes people make?
One thing I counsel people on is, especially when you're talking to executives, you need to tell a story, but don't tell your life story. First, we started with this, then we did that, and then the team decided we should pivot, and then we tried this stuff. And it's your first 5 minutes is the most important part of it, if not, the first 2 minutes, to capture their attention with some form of headline-like announcement or proclamation that just says, here's why we're here and why it's important. And people, just in general, when they present, have they tried it out first? Have they gotten up on their feet and just kind of voiced it out? A lot of people think, okay, I'll be ready. I hear this in my head, I'll be ready. And they've never done anything before on their feet, and you're going to fail. So there's content parts. Okay, get the content right. Make sure I was, had some journalism training, so I always think of, headlines and cutting from the bottom and a lead sentence, and just that structure itself just helps so much organize what's important. And then the technique parts of making sure it's a compelling story. I mean, making sure, you go in the boardroom, they're not there to get bored. I have this card from my wife. I keep bringing her up that I keep right on my desk, right on my monitor. It's just, don't be boring. Okay. Try that. Try and get a little exciting. Another big problem or another big challenge that people have is they just keep talking. All right. So let's say your CEO loves what you're doing. Here's a dream sequence here. You go in, you got a half an hour, and in 7 minutes, somebody gets it. They're like, yeah, this could really help. What are you going to do? Most people are going to go, well, I have another 23 minutes and I had 12 more slides. I wanted to go through those. I'm fourth generation sales. My dad taught me really early, when you get the yes, shut up. You've done it. Don't keep selling. And if people think you're not selling when you're having these discussions, you're wrong. You are selling. You're trying to convince somebody of the benefits of what you have to offer. You're trying to create some form of commitment for action and support. That is what selling is all about. I don't see it as a 4-letter word that's a bad word. That's just, it drives business. So being too long in the beginning, not knowing when to shut up, and being way too technical. Here's our data model, and here's this, and here's the flow, and here's and if you see there, and put a slide on that looks like, some kind of technical design is not going to capture their attention. If you want techniques, then check out my book. I mean, that's what I really do. I even talk about my dad's anecdote there about getting the S and shutting up, and just some short little sales type techniques. But I do a lot of public speaking, as you know, and I've really come down to the feeling that it's half content and half delivery. Maybe it's 60-40, it ain't 70-30. It's 90-10 if you're some genius, presenting something that everybody's, falling off every word on. But in most cases, most of the time, most of the stuff you're talking about, think about it as half and half. And I think data people think it's, 100% the content, and who cares how I deliver it.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. And if you're a leader, another warning is you're up against better storytellers in your organization by nature. The head of marketing knows how to tell stories. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the head of marketing. Head of sales knows how to tell stories. Otherwise, they wouldn't make quota. These people are better at those soft skill techniques because that's what makes them good at those roles.
Yeah.
And whatever you have in data could be much more powerful than anything they're bringing in. But if you don't articulate it in the right way, people aren't going to understand the opportunity they're missing.
Yeah. There's are there any particular you mentioned your book. I mean, are there any particular concrete steps or checklists you would recommend for someone? Because one thing I find is people in data are very systematic thinkers. And that's good. That makes them good at data, but sometimes it makes it hard for them to sit down and they hear advice like, well, you don't be boring. And, once you get to yes and shut up. And they're like, okay, I hear all this, but where's my rubric? Where's my checklist? Where's my process? Is there a particular thing you would recommend? And feel free to plug your book if you want.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to plug my book because that was part of the objective of the book. I'm looking for the pages here, but I don't see it. But there's a whole list of questions under the subhead take no for an answer, KNOW, where you have to know all this background. And it's a natural sales and marketing technique too, when you're thinking about what your audience is, what they care about, what are the things they're interested in. And I boiled this all down to what I call the 3 V's of data storytelling. Obviously, it'll knowing wink to the 3 V's of big data, but mine are vocabulary, voice, and vision. Real quickly, vocabulary, get the words right. Don't use the buzzwords. Talk the language of the business. Voice is the way you present it. Do you and your team know how to do an elevator pitch? Can you market this internally in a way that people will understand? And is it consistent? If you go across your team and ask 10 of them what you do in data and you get 11 answers, you're in trouble. And then the final one is vision. Everything you do in data needs to enable the strategic intentions of your enterprise. Where's your company going and why is data going to help you get there. And, big news, I would put this in the mistakes too. Don't start, unless you work for Nielsen or Dun & Bradstreet or these companies that I work for, don't start with, we're a data company.
Yeah.
Oh, we manufacture cars. So I don't know about or, we're a bank or we're insurance. No, we're really a data company. I hate that, or we're a software company. Every company's a software company. Every company's an AI company. That logic falls apart for me. It's like if the tools you used made you the kind of company you are, then face it, every company's a paperclip company. And we don't see anybody bragging about that. So, the data people love to say, we're a data company. No, you're not. What does your company really do? How does it provide value to the relationships you have? You want to do that at scale. Focus on that stuff.
Absolutely. We've got a bunch of good questions coming in now. So,
good. Hopefully none of them are technical. Yes. All right,
they are not, right? So,
an essay
Karthik,
question here. It's a long one. All right.
Yep. Karthik wants to know, why is it that data initiatives often face the highest resistance from leadership simply because the ROI isn't immediate? And how can you reframe the narrative to highlight long-term strategic value? Excellent question.
Best question of the day so far for me. It goes into that understanding. It starts with the understanding of the vision of your company, and data initiatives in general face resistance. And if you're in the data management space, like I was, master data, reference data, metadata, MDM, RDM, PIM, RAM, DAM, all those foundational things that people do, it's even harder to show an immediate ROI or direct ROI because those things end up being enablers to other stuff. So if, for instance, your CEO wrote in your annual report, here are our 5 objectives. First of all, none of them are going to be, we need better data quality, or gee, how can we implement Python, or whatever those things are. They are going to talk about the relationships they have. They are going to talk about the value they want to bring to those relationships, and they are going to talk in some way or another about doing those things at scale. Find those tidbits, find those little pieces in the high-level discussion of what your company does, and tie the data work you do to those. And in most cases, the things your leaders are talking about cannot get done in an efficient, effective way without the work you can provide in the data space. And you can be as declarative and direct about that as you want, or you can be, we'll soft pedal it a little more. But if one of your big initiatives is to, create an as-a-service offering that brings better ongoing subscription level value to our customer base, all right, it takes a lot of data to get that done. First of all, how many duplicates in your customer master? Let's start there. We're trying to deliver the next best offer to this version of, John Doe versus that version of John Doe who you think is bad debt. Get that stuff fixed, or at least somehow managed. And you can show, we want to do great with our customers. Here's what our customer list looks like. It's a mess. You got to be a little diplomatic to show that stuff, but it's always in there. We look at our top categories, and the number 2 category every year is other. Under that is other. Because it's so hard to spell miscellaneous. So they call it other. These things are real. And it's, when I was on the supplier side, I affectionately called it a step in the sales process called telling somebody their baby's ugly. It's hard to do, but you've got to show them that, because these big things you want to do in marketing and sales and operations and finance and all across the company really can't get done without great data. And that's the story. That's part of the story you want to tell. Just having that purview, having that understanding. They want to do this, but you can't get it done because we don't have the data to back it up.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's really critically important, especially as a data leader. You need to be tuned in to what the other leaders are talking about at your company. And if all you're focused on is your tech stack and how much you get done in sprints and all that sort of stuff, you're missing the most important part of your job, which is the way in which you serve the other leaders. But data people really, I think, have bad feelings about the fact that data is, in almost all companies, a service organization. They want to be the lead organization. And the reality is it's very rare unless your company truly sells data and that's what they do.
Yeah.
You are in a service position because your company makes cars or Eric's company, makes college graduates. That's, like that's your goal, right? Your goal is not to solve data problems. And so you need to listen to the other leaders. They will articulate to you, either directly to you, or even if you just make sure you're in the room and you can hear them talking to one another about what's important and what problems they're trying to solve and why. And then you tie that back to your data work. That's just so powerful.
And it's all there. I mean, it's there. The problems are there, and the opportunity we have as data folks, which is unique among those other departments, is data can help sales, it can help marketing, it can help finance, it can help legal, it can help the executive level, it can help operations, it can help all these separate verticals in your organization. It is the horizontal value across all of them. And give me another department that has that kind of opportunity, who could literally, on the conceptual basis, talk to any other department lead in their company and say, I know I can help you. Tell me what your problems are.
Yeah.
And if you have really good master data, reference data, metadata, it gets super efficient because the same record can help each of those departments. If it's well mastered and well governed, it just has a huge efficiency play. But it's hard to articulate that in a true, back to the original question, I spent $1 here, I got $1.25 out of the other end. You got to somehow get out of that direct cause and effect relationship, because it's first of all, it's not strategic. We cleaned up our zip codes, so we saved, 37 cents a mailer for this campaign. All right, great. Why are you in my office telling me about this? That's your job anyway. No, you got to keep it get as high as you can in terms of the level of the discussion. And, next time, imagine you're sitting there across the table from your CEO at, the company picnic, and you got the shot to tell them what you want and what you're going to do. What are you going to say?
Yeah. Yeah. And that leads, Scott, perfectly to Michael Dunphy's question here. He asks, do you think data teams should just focus on speed, quality, and cost, and just point all data initiatives back to those three when communicating? So, I mean, I would broaden that to, yes, those things. And also, what are the most effective things to point to as a data team to say, oh, this is the value we bring? Is there like a golden standard? If you can tie it to cost control, then that's the best thing? Or what would you say to that?
I find, again, in my work, I try to simplify things, try to use the least number of words, if there aren't 20 buckets of value, there should be 3, let's say. And for me in data, there's only 3 things I've seen that data can do: help grow the business, help improve the business, help protect the business. Grows, increase sales, improve his operational efficiency, protect his mitigate risk, but you don't have 37 of them. And the power we have is it can do those 3 things concurrently, often with the same data, but articulating in the simple way. Not simple because these people don't understand complicated concepts, but simple so people who don't have the background you do can understand what the hell you're talking about. If they want to know more, they'll always ask for more. So, that could be speed, that could be quality, that could be cost. Again, I think grow, improve, protect feel like, better words. And so sometimes it's just, looking in the thesaurus for what's better than, speed or cost. Is it improve? That's kind of a nicer word. But it always ties back to that. It always ties back to that in some way.
I mean, I think those 3 words as a data department motto would be very powerful, right?
Yes,
that's our
right
motto. We grow, we improve, we protect. That's what we
grow,
do.
Improve, protect. Yes. Put it in Latin and embroider it on your
exactly. Get it on the department crest. Dan Blake asks, what are your thoughts of data people partnering up with sales or marketing people to get their message across as a sounding board internally? Can you turn to these other departments and say, hey, can you help me tighten up this message? Can you partner with them, do you think?
It's a superior idea. It's actually mentioned in my book as well, which is go to better storytellers in your organization. As I mentioned, sales and marketing naturally know how to do that. If you're going to put a little marketing program together internally, go to your marketing head and say, look, I want to kind of dovetail on the way we talk about our company externally and use that as the metaphor to talk about it internally. So we're a healthcare company, and great data is the lifeblood of our organization, and a healthy business runs on healthy data, and you've got everybody into sort of they understand it right away. And I've had some experience and examples with people doing that to break through. But yes, absolutely help them, and even not just on the positioning and branding, but also on the use cases and examples of what went right. If you get a salesperson, if you can help a salesperson sell more stuff, and that that's a proof of concept that you're putting together, and they will be more than happy to put the pitch together for you to make sure everybody else understands the success they had and the success that we can, you could scale across the organization. Same with marketing. So there are absolutely great thought, Dan, and I echo that in my book, as I mentioned. Yes, go find better storytellers to help you put this stuff together, and they are, for sure, all of them are going to tell you to cut.
Yeah, there's that
Cut,
quote.
Edit, too many words, too busy. It's a way to pull that and learn some of those disciplines too. Just like tell people, I plead with the data community. It's like, do something. Okay, just do something. It's better than nothing. Just try something extra. Try something, mildly creative. If you're not running ads on TV or doing Super Bowl promotions, you don't have to worry about, being Madison Avenue level. Just do something that captures people's attention in some way.
Aaron Wilkerson shares here. I'm guilty of saying that once before. Yeah. Welcome back, Aaron. Fellow Detroiter, Aaron Wilkerson. He says, I'm guilty of saying that once before. We're a data company. I apologize.
All right. You are forgiven, my friend. It's okay. We all start somewhere. Yes. But yes, it's a very popular. Another one is great. You really want to confuse people, walk in and say, okay, we need data contracts to help monetize our data products.
Yeah.
There's not a single word in there that a business person won't misinterpret.
A data mesh will probably help with that. You should implement a data mesh. A data mesh would probably help with that.
Yes, a data mesh. It's like, oh, you mean we're going to sell our data? No, we're not going to sell. I pick on even words like monetize. Okay, so because the root, again, if you're not a data person and you hear the word monetize, what do you think that means? Money. I mean, cash is our favorite way to monetize it, but very rarely is the monetization of data at an organization directly related to bringing new revenue in for that data. It's a different, getting in the data business is a different business than whatever business you're in if you're not in the data business. I mean, it's a very different business. So I get it, and I love that we want to try and find value, but just picking on that word maybe a little heavily for this example, those words mean something different to somebody in finance or at the C level. And, data product, data contract. I mean, I picked on the data contract thing just because it sounds like, it sounds like a contract. Well, it's really an SLA. Well, it's a little different than an SLA. Well, a data product that we don't really sell, but we monetize. It's just, clear out, keep that amongst yourselves. Talk about that in the department all you want. Go to, data conferences and Gartner. You can talk about that all you want. But when you get to the business side, use their language and they'll understand you better.
Yeah. And I mean, that's just critical, right? We have here a comment from Brad. So Brad says, greetings from Atlanta. The need to convey a story has been around for decades, and it's a very challenging task. And the reason why is the reasons why and the audience have evolved over the years. Do you see the compelling data stories? Are they changing much over time? Is the story that you would have told 15 years ago at the start of the Hadoop era different than the story you would tell today?
Hadoop, what a cluster.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I don't think fundamentally. And I do a bit in my presentations around, okay, let's look at Gen AI. Do we have a new story? Gen AI came out. All of a sudden, people are talking about the training corpus and AI governance. We need better data in there to feed those models. Same thing happened. Big data came along. volume, velocity, variety. To get value out of big data, you need to structure something. So there had to be some kind of structure. Enterprise systems came out. People realized, okay, we have to harmonize this legacy data. You know, you go back before computers, you go back to like before electricity. Basic accounting started with a general ledger, and a general ledger needed a chart of accounts, which is a well-structured, organized list of entities that you deal with. So my conclusion, at least at the high level, is from Gen AI all the way back to Gen Ledger, it's the same story. The stuff's got to be good to make it work. We need commitment from the organization to establish this standard. It's got to show value. And so I have not seen a remarkably different story other than some version of garbage in, garbage out. It's just, but the good news, I think, and this was helped me in my career to realize that what I was talking about was going to be relevant no matter what after a certain point, which is, you know, data management and the need for the kinds of things I've always represented is macro trend agnostic. No matter what else is coming up, if it has to do with technology, it's going to need data. And if you have data, you need data management. And that's checkmate right there. And keeping that idea that, you know, the story is the same, the characters might be different, the actors might be different, to play on that metaphor a little bit, but to know that and have the confidence that no matter what else is coming, these fundamentals have to stay in place is, I think, going to make you a more powerful advocate for data in your organization.
One of the things we hear a lot, and it, especially the last few years, is this conversation around business value and what is value. And I'm curious, how do you approach that question? Right? Like, is there a standard definition of value? And if not, how do you go about figuring out what that is in your organization?
There is no standard definition of value, and I see all the LinkedIn chatter that goes back and forth on that, and then the sudden epiphanies that some people have of, you know what we have to do? We have to demonstrate business value. It's like, duh. I mean, just taking it to the side a bit, I don't think the rest of the departments in an organization ponder that question to the level that we do. I don't think marketing is going, gee, I think we have to figure out how to demonstrate business value. Or, you know, finance is certainly not. Legal's not doing that. Operations isn't doing that. So what is it? I sort of throw it back because I don't really have the perfect answer to turn us around on it. But what it is about the data space where we have these theoretical existential discussions around and recognition of our real purpose is business value. It's like, yeah, you got a job in this company. You got to make stuff happen. It's got to be worth something. Otherwise, you're out of here. Now, putting that into a story, go back to those buckets. You can bring value to an organization by helping grow it, helping improve it, helping protect it. There is value there, but there's still this gap. I mean, it's keeping me in business, but
Yeah.
is there still seems to be this gap and this disconnect between the way we talk in the data space and the way businesses operate and the terminology and vocabulary they use. That's why my first V is vocabulary. And, you know, I'm doing my best every day to help people break through that.
Here we've got a question from Michael Dunphy. What are some examples of protecting a company in terms of data? What does protecting look like?
Are you talking about in my, like, mitigate
Yeah.
risk? Yeah. So
Yep.
it's, you know, I mean, those are actually the, you know, you're working with the wrong type of suppliers. You've got a data breach. You've got, you know, you're trying to mitigate the risk of having certain relationships. You're trying to give your salespeople an understanding of, you know, reducing exposure to entities they shouldn't try to pursue. You know, there's a lot of in compliance, and there are a lot of risks in there that if you don't adhere to the right data standards, you're going to get a visit from the regulators, which is not fun. And in fact, a lot of data initiatives kind of get their start when somebody gets in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
You
Oh,
know?
yeah.
So it's, you know, how do we keep the sea level off the front page of the Wall Street Journal because it's the latest, you know, data breach or data problem. So those are all things that, you know, data and data management can help in an organization to protect them from that stuff. So,
I kind of have a story from early in my career, Scott, around that exact concept. So I started my career at a utility in Wisconsin in data. And at some point, we were running all of our regulatory affairs off of Excel. And we did business across 2 states, Wisconsin and Iowa. Well, we had told the Wisconsin regulators that we have, I don't know, 1.1 million customers. And then we told the Iowa regulators that we have 900,000. And it turns out that regulators know each other and they talk. And this was the genesis of what wound up being like $100 million software implementation that included a data warehouse and analytics that started with the question of, what is a customer? And you'd think, that's a classic, like, how do we define that, And it boiled down to the different halves of the organization defined it differently, tracked it differently, and it got us in real hot water.
Oh, yeah.
And so, Michael, I think that's an example of where, like, data clarity would have prevented that whole mess.
And there are, to pick on that tends to be the big debate first topic that a lot of people do, which is the right one to start. For me, it's the right one to start with too. I mean, customers and relationships, that's what I mean by relationships. Most of them are, custom. If you don't have relationships, you don't have a business. You don't have customers, you don't have a business. But a good friend of mine, you probably know, Malcolm Hawker, talks about how, and he brings this up, and he and I traveled the world together. He was my data brother at Dun & Bradstreet. And he talks about how, it's okay to have, like, there's a valid reason that sales may look at a customer differently than finance and operations, build to, ship to, sell to kinds of things. But knowing that and cataloging that and having an understanding of that can help you get to better answers, because operations needs to know how many places they ship and they call customer. Finance needs to know how many places they bill and they call customer. But you need a number that everybody can agree on. So when the CEO says, how many customers do we have? It's not, the answer is it depends. But it's a natural thing. That's why hierarchy is so important. That's why structuring on there, it's categorization. These foundational things are so critical.
Yeah, we get that at the university too. Like the question, like, how many? We need to find out how many active students to have. It's like, well, what do you mean by active, and what do you mean by student? Right.
Yeah.
So that's and there are many departments. Universities are siloed like companies, and like, you know what? The health colleges, they might call a student something else. So it's like a lot of times there's like lots of different definitions. So I think that ties back to what you were saying. Like, you got to know the lingo. If you're talking to health sciences, what do they consider a student? Because it could be a regulatory difference of what a student is for them versus us.
Right. And even just using the terminology, your relationships, many of them are students. That's what you call that relationship. If you're a hospital, they're patients. If you're a government, it's citizen. If you're a retailer, it's consumer. If you're a manufacturer, consumers are the end users and customers are the retailers. I was brought up at Nielsen in the retail space. So I understand, there's terminology there that's just hard coded into the vernacular of a vertical. And you need to, again, as a data leader, you need to know that terminology. You need to know those nuances.
When it comes time to go secure funding for your project.
I thought we were leaving. Okay.
No, we got a little time left.
When it comes time to go, bye.
And I have not forgotten your Mario story that you want to share.
All right.
So we will pull that out in a second. But
I the jacket, so you did mention sartorial.
Yeah. Well, the sartorial. Yeah. One of the for those of you who are curious, one of the ways that I know Scott is that I see him occasionally at conferences, and he always has the most incredible jackets.
Thank you.
And so
I told my stylist that too. So that's why I wore this one. But I think you've said I brought my other favorites. I brought the cranberry. I've got the what I was told is thunder salmon. So that's a nice
thunder salmon.
Yeah, that's a good, powerful color.
And I'll go to my tailor and ask for a thunder salmon suit.
Which they pop. You want to pop. You want to, we take these pictures and take a look. What do you? It's great because most everybody's in like blues and browns and grays. So guess what stands out when you're in a sea of blue and brown and gray? So it's
absolutely.
Literally, yes.
Yeah, no, it's quite memorable. Look, this is an example of marketing, right? And how to do it well. It's like you become the guy with the cool jackets at the conference. Everybody, they will know, like they will notice, and they might not even, they might see you 2 or 3 times and be like, "That's the guy with the cool jackets," and then eventually they're like, "Who is the guy with the cool jackets?"
I love it. Yeah, and I've got a very healthy ego. I have no problem accepting compliments. So they're like, "Oh, that's a great jacket." Thank you.
Yeah. It works. Trust me. It works. I take a similar tack, where like I try to be at the fancier conferences anyway. I'm like I actually wore a suit guy, and I have some custom suits, and I have like a powder blue one with wingtips and really sharp tie and all that sort of stuff. So
all right, well, we got to meet up in one of these. So we'll get the shot with both of
us. So we have we have 8 minutes left. Folks, this is a live show, as many of you have noted. But if you're just tuning in, if you ask questions, we will try to get them in before the end of the show here. Now, I want to make sure I ask this one. Roger Nixon asks, if an enterprise thinks of its IT as being on par with janitorial services, why should they think of data as being special? It's a cost center versus an opportunity for transformation.
That enterprise needs to tell a better data story. Because if that's all you're regulated to is they think, all right, you're one cut above janitorial services. Not that we don't think that's important. You're not getting Ryan, you mentioned you're not getting in the room where it happens. You're not hearing about the company direction. You're not sharing how why you can help them. And those opportunities are there. So it's incumbent on the folks who are leading either IT or data or both to make sure the rest of the organization understands that in whatever way you can. The problems are there that data can solve. If you haven't taken a salesperson out to lunch or a marketing director, for coffee or any of these other folks and do what are basically sales techniques. Again, I'm trying to encourage people to have a little bit of sales chops about them and listen to what they're trying to accomplish. You'll hear the data problems. You'll hear the problems that data can solve. They'll be there because you're tuned to that. You understand that. You know what kind of capabilities you either have or want to build. And those should fit right into enabling those strategic intentions of your enterprise. I've said that, phrase a lot because I think it really sums up the true value that data can bring to an organization.
All right. So we got to get to this Mario story. Before we do, I got to give a quick plug for our sponsor here, Good Data. Good Data is underwriting the whole season. So thank you, Good Data, for your generous support of the Super Data Brothers show. Make sure to tune in next Tuesday, May 27th at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Central European time, as I interview and go deep with Matt Housley and Joe Reese on the topic of the collision between analytics and engineering. And this is a topic that I'm talking with people about. It's seemingly nonstop lately. It's just as these software engineering techniques come into data, they make data teams more trusted and more efficient. You can deliver faster. We're really seeing that in the real world, and that's what we're going to be talking with Matt and Joe about. So go to gooddata.com/resources, register, and I will see you there next Tuesday at 9, 12, or 6, respectively.
I think I met Roman in 2009 was the first time I.
Did you really?
Just started Good Data, and Joe and Matt I know, so I've been on their show a bunch of times. I love them. Joe and I have done some shows together. He's in his back. He's one of the original Data Avengers. I'm trying to point in the mirror here. One of those. But we have a ball, and I'm thanked a couple times in his book, which I kind of ribbed them on because there's some duplicates in their thank yous, and I was fortunate to be one of them. I'm like,
there you go.
I'm thanked. Okay, I'll take it. But great guys, and that book is obviously a huge seller and inspired a lot of folks. So they're wonderful on both sides of the mic.
Yeah, great dudes. All right, let's hear this Mario story.
So because you're Super Data Brothers, I'm sure you guys know, but does everybody know the voice, the Mel Blanc of your generation, the voice of Mario, Charles Martinet?
Yeah.
You knew that was him. So Charlie is a personal friend of mine. We go way back. Here we are on a recent Zoom call. but also here we are like 45 years ago, just out of college in Berkeley. We're actually, I believe we're singing some form of Leon Redbone song in that moment. But Charlie and I go way back, and we did a lot of local community theater together. And I did a lot of that, which, by the way, helps every day with me. So just, the concept of being on, of understanding, timing, movements, voice, all those techniques are the most important things I learned in college. So Charlie and I were in a show here. We're doing a kind of an off-campus rehearsal of a bit we did in this Shakespeare play called Taming of the Shrew, which was, as many directors will do, kind of updated the timing. So instead of taking place in Elizabethan times, it took place in post-World War II Italy. Okay, so that was kind of the timing setup. All the words were the same, but Petruchio was a GI, and he came and he was wooing Kate, was this Italian woman in this little village, and I played a part of this guy who kind of disguised himself, and my disguise was more of like a New York gangster kind of guy. I was like demmed and doze, and I had a really heavy, thick New York accent with my iambic pentameter from Shakespeare. And Charlie played the mayor of this Italian town, and he had an extremely exaggerated, heavy Italian accent. And he was like, so all his Shakespeare came out in that sort of Italian accent. The show is done. Not too long after that, he gets this audition, which also, by the way, he was literally the last one in, I think, for this audition. It's like, Italian plumber, I've done this. He raised it up like 2 or 3 octaves. And that character that he played in this Shakespeare play that he and I had a bunch of scenes in became Mario. And then, Wario and Luigi and all the rest of them. And you can look in Wikipedia. I actually checked him out. In Wikipedia, he credits that play as kind of the inspiration for his Mario character. But I go way back with him, and he's just a tremendous guy. And he's just had an unbelievable career. And I'm so proud of him as being, again, that sort of Mel Blanc for his generation. But what fun.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Well, listen, pass along our thank you.
Oh, I will. Okay.
To him. Next, say
Yeah.
He's been a critical inspiration for us, clearly. And
I'm going to send him a link to the show so he can see if I told the story.
All right.
But
I mean,
Charlie's just one. He did one of my son's prized possessions is the voicemail that he sent him in his, hey Liam, this is Mario. Oh, it's Wario. He went through like 9 characters. It's just a wonderful, wonderful guy and a great friend for probably now, like, 40 pushing someday 50 years. The two of us go back. So yeah.
That's really great. I mean, it is, look, the name of the show is good marketing, right? But it's also, I'm a true Mario lover. Like, I'm the right age. I was 5 when that first game came out, and I've played virtually all of them. And please, like I said, please give him.
I will let Charlie know. I'm going to send him a link to the show for sure. So he'll like it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, cool. Okay, we are at time here. Scott, where can people follow you if they want to keep up with your work?
Find me on LinkedIn, Scott Taylor Data Whisperer. I have a YouTube channel as well, if you want to check that out. Some other content I have called the Data Puppets, which we haven't talked about, but some characters in the back here, the CDO, the Chief Dog Officer, and then the ITB, who speaks only in buzzwords. There's a Cat Sultan from Meow Kinsey. I tried to get Charlie to do one of the voices, but we couldn't really work it out there. And there's a whole host of these ridiculous characters starring in a series I call Journey to the Center of the Single Version of the Truth, the Greatest Data Story Ever Told. Google Data Puppets. I dare you to Google Data Puppets, and all you will see, talk about confidence, is my stuff, which inspired me to keep going on it. It's like, Google has never seen the word data and puppets together other than related to me. So I dare you all, listeners out there, Google, and all you'll see is, links to this content. But LinkedIn is the best place to start for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, Scott. It's been real fun having you.
This has been great. I've been wanting to be on this show for a while. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, great having you.
All right. Listen, folks, this is your first time tuning in. We are here. We run in seasons. So we're in the middle of season 3 right now. We'll be running through the middle end of June on season 3. You can catch us every week at 12 o'clock Eastern time. We broadcast live. So bring your questions, your comments, your hot takes, your spicy opinions. As you can see, you ask it, we read it. Next week, we have to pull a little switcheroo. If you look at the calendar content, you'll see we were originally going to talk to Aaron Wilkerson on the show. Huge fans of Aaron, but he had a conflict come up. He can't attend. And so I think we're going to be doing a pivot to a review of Metabase, the open source BI tool, quite popular. So we will be doing a deep dive on that and seeing, looking at the good, bad, and the ugly of Metabase. So if you're curious about how Metabase works, tune in and we'll be going deep on that topic.
And then also a little bit of comparison, because the last open source BI tool reviewed was Superset, and people seem pretty interested in that. So we'll be doing a little bit of comparing and contrasting as well. But so mostly it'll be a deep dive of the.
We will complete the open source BI pantheon of like the 2 tools anybody cares about.
Yes.
All right. Well, all right. Listen, you've been a great audience today. It's been great having you. Go ahead and do us a favor. Give us a like and a comment on this video, particularly if you're watching on YouTube. We got to teach our robot overlords that the Super Data Brothers are doing something valuable here. So like, comment, share with your friends. And until next time, we are the Super Data Brothers.
All right. Thank you.
See ya. Bye.